Hello, and happy Sunday. So it's nice to be able to come on and talk to you about different things on here. And so today I thought I would speak to you about what being trauma informed means to me. And I invite you to question what that might mean to you once you've learned a little bit about that. So first of all, my name's Leslie. I'm an artist and an art therapist. I used to be an art teacher, and so my work with people brings all of those things together. So I help people to express themselves, be able to express themselves genuinely, regardless of what they've been through, regardless of their roles, regardless of their pressures and shoulds. And some of that involves being able to think about someone's experiences and help them to be able to process experiences, regulate emotions, and really express themselves from their core, from their truth and what really matters to them. So in terms of being trauma informed, this is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. What that means to me, and the type of things that assumptions that people might make about being trauma informed perhaps might come up, and certain things that are very much about my particular views on it as an art therapist that's been working in mental health areas, working as an art therapist for over 10 years. Some of these things are the practices and the expectations and part of the procedures and part of the models that are in place, as well as things that are sort of personal to me. Hello, nice to see you. So as well as things that have really mattered to me and what I've noticed as I've been working with one-to-one with people, as I've been working with groups and organisations. So when I think about the word trauma informed, we've got two words there, very much about like the trauma, the experiences that people and myself as well have been through or may still be going through, whether it's on an individual basis, whether it's in someone's past, or whether it's maybe more systemically, a wider context, more about the organisations and the world. And I'm being informed about that. So being informed about trauma does not mean that I would know about people's experiences necessarily. Sometimes I'd be aware because they've shared with me things that may have happened to them or the thoughts that they've had about that. However, being informed about trauma and being aware of that is having that awareness that rather than somebody like just assuming what's going on for someone, we would maybe take a sense that it's possible that someone's been through something challenging that may have impacted on them, and whether they have called it trauma themselves or not, I'm just really aware that of the trauma implications of that. So sometimes people will ask a question of what's wrong with that person. And instead of asking what's wrong with them, a better way and a more trauma-informed way of working with somebody and connecting with somebody is what's happened to that person. And not everybody is open or wanting to or able to share those things, nor might people even remember what might have happened to them. Sometimes trauma happens like at such an early age for many people that they can't kind of remember it from in a cognitive way. They might remember it in their body. It might be stored more in their body, but in a cognitive, factual way, and let alone finding words to express how they're feeling and what that might mean, that can be really, really challenging for people. So if I'm considering myself to be trauma informed, it's having that sense that somebody that I'm working with may have that impact from trauma or their experiences. And having that, if I was to make an assumption about what that might mean, that would be a challenge for them as well. So the first point really, in a nutshell, is to help somebody to feel safe, to help somebody to feel physically safe, hi Lisa, and psychologically safe wherever they are, like in that therapeutic space or in that community, whatever it is that someone's accessing, to help them to feel that they can share things if they're wanting to, but they don't have to. So some of those things from an art therapy perspective are often talked about in terms of attachment theory and thinking about a secure base. So the idea of creating a secure base when within the therapeutic relationship. So that means that somebody can feel a sense of safety. Maybe they might know when the session's going to happen. Like ideally, in a perfect world, therapy sessions might happen at the same time, same place, and the same day of the week, and the regularity really clear. However, that's not always possible, but it's maybe having that understanding that maybe a time to check in with how someone's doing and to go at their pace. So as well as having that secure base, that safe space, being able to work and offer invitations for people to talk or not talk if they don't want to, create some art if they want to, not create art if they don't want to, whatever way it is. And like for me to let go of any expectations that I may or may not have. From my perspective, I may recognise pressures from my perspective for a certain thing to happen. Sometimes people might expect to be talking about what's gone on for them or feel that they should. However, it might not feel safe for them to talk about it. It might feel too upsetting, or it might feel overwhelming, or they might just not find the words or have the words to describe how they're feeling or what's going on for them at the moment. So actually taking time to just be and to work out what's going on, to maybe do things very slowly, maybe create some images. As an art therapist, that's one of the key reasons why using art and creative methods is helpful, because we often don't have the right words to describe how we're feeling. Hello! We often don't have the words to describe how we're feeling. So being able to do other things and for it to be okay to maybe just blurt something out or say something that might not make sense or stay quiet. Those kind of things can be really helpful for somebody, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult. How close that traumatic experience has happened might not necessarily matter. It could feel very raw for somebody if an experience has happened recently. However, actually, sometimes people come to me as adults and actually their past experiences or their something going on currently might be really weighing them down and like really challenging for them. So actually there's no pressure to talk like that. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about is this kind of myth about what somebody that's experiencing trauma might do or feel like or expect from people. So first of all, I've got some bubble wrap. If I were to wrap myself in bubble wrap, this is to protect me from the world. This idea of like something's happened, I don't want to go anywhere, I need to protect myself from the world. Sometimes us as individuals, you as an individual might do something to physically protect yourself from the world. It might be that from a practical level, it might be wearing a hat when you're going outside in the cold. It might be wearing a raincoat. And it might be that there's things that are protecting you psychologically from the things that are going on for you. Maybe some anxiety has come up. Maybe some nerves about going out, following different experiences, or maybe some thoughts and some feelings that are coming up that might be challenging to feel. So sometimes people might protect themselves by either avoiding the situation, distracting themselves from a situation, or changing the situation so that it doesn't affect them in the same sort of way. So sometimes people are kind of considered to be like, well, actually, if you've done that, then maybe you're not facing it straight on, or maybe there's sometimes people feel pressure to cope with their traumas or heal in a certain way. But I would say actually these kind of things might not mean the same. So I've got some fragile tape. Well, it's even fallen apart already. Fragile tape. If I am feeling fragile, I might want the world to know that right now I'm feeling fragile, I'm feeling wobbly. Some things maybe happened where I'm feeling wobbly, and that might be helpful. Or it might be that somebody else, a parent or a carer or somebody else, a friend, has kind of put that on that person. They've projected that onto them, like maybe feeling sorry for that person, feeling some sympathy towards that person after what may have happened. However, actually, that's not necessarily what people want. It can be useful sometimes. However, actually, what people often need or can find useful is to sit alongside them. So perhaps offering empathy or mentalisation, which I can explain a bit more at some point, but just putting that out there now, rather than a sympathy. Because that means that instead of assuming that that person is fragile because of the challenge that they went through, it's offering a space to say, actually, I feel the feelings with you, and we just sit alongside you and see what's going on. I'm not going to make an assumption about how you're feeling. I'm just going to be here. So then the next thing that I think is important to acknowledge or recognise that can happen a lot, I would say, is masking. So you couldn't hear what I said there. People mask for all kinds of reasons, and that protective mask and creating a mask, physically creating a mask in art therapy can be a good way to acknowledge that happens, or express something like that is going on for that person, for you, if you were making something like this. But just this as a symbol of perhaps showing up differently. Hello. Perhaps showing up differently, perhaps wearing a mask if you're maybe have something that you wanted to do and not necessarily wanting to really wanting to kind of push through. Sometimes wearing a mask and being stronger, showing kind of maybe putting on some armour, putting on that resilience armour to show up and feel stronger than you might have actually felt. You might be feeling the fragile tape, but then you've ripped off your bubble wrap and put on your mask. And these are all the kind of things that when working with an individual, when I'm working with groups, or when I'm working with families, that I find myself aware of and find myself just cautious of and meeting people where they're at, however they're showing up. And there will be times when it's necessary for me to acknowledge that with somebody. Maybe acknowledge that actually it seems like you're having to really push through here or show up and be really strong here. However, my guess is that behind that mask, behind the bubble wrap and behind like the fragile sign, you might be feeling different. And sometimes people may say yes, sometimes people may say no. Hi, Claire. And these are all part of just being trauma informed for me. It's very different for everybody. So everyone I'm working with and everyone that I will work with in the future will have this sense of just a permission to show up as they are, really, rather than like a set pattern and a set program and an assumption about how they might be if they're upset or anything like that. So we've got the bubble wrap, we've got these other things. I have some glasses as well. So the rose tinted glasses. I have no idea where I got these from. I would love to find out because I want some more things like this. These are cool. So the rose tinted glasses idea is that we often see the world through sort of rose tinted glasses, and we can often, it's nice sometimes to be able to, it can be really useful if you're going through a hard time to be showing gratitude and feeling that gratitude and really being mindful and noticing the small things. Like I was out in nature today and it's just really noticing the small things like the raindrops, and that just been really lovely, a really lovely experience. And I think there are some huge benefits of seeing things in a positive way, seeing things through rose tinted glasses. However, what I also notice is that there's a lot of pressure for people to put on their rose tinted glasses when they're actually feeling really rubbish, when they're actually feeling a lack of confidence or feeling really heavy with their emotions. And through showing up and attending therapy, working and having those authentic conversations, this is a bit of a permission slip to just to be. And if you're upset, if you cry, if you're angry or whatever feelings that you have, then it's permission to feel those feelings. So of course, if there's anything that kind of feels too extreme or sort of becomes violent, thing like that, then I don't tolerate that. However, things for an example of this would be if someone's upset and they're crying, for me not to automatically pass them the tissues, because what that might mean for somebody, although for somebody else it might not, we could check in with them and find out. What it can often mean for somebody is the message given of stop crying, I need you to stop crying, and it might be reinforcing a belief that somebody has. So stop crying because we don't think that you can. It might either be a belief of we don't think that you can cope with your tears. You shouldn't be crying. Like your tears aren't valid, or it might be I can't tolerate your tears, or it might just be your expression doesn't matter. So actually, some of these things about self-expression and like what these emotions really, what it's like to show these emotions can be so challenging for people. A lot of people may be wearing the mask, pretending things are fine, putting on the rose tinted glasses, saying I'm fine, but actually they're secretly struggling. And I'm here with my trauma informed hat on. Oh, I don't have a trauma informed hat. We'll have a trauma informed bag to do something ridiculous, to say that actually there is no set thing, that there's no magic wand, there's no come along and make art and suddenly you'll be healed. There's lots of breakthroughs and insights and shifts that can happen when I'm working with people, for the people that I'm working with. There's lots of shifts. Sometimes that's through the relationship, sometimes it's through the images that I've made, sometimes it's in between sessions with things that somebody's gone and done as a result of maybe feeling more confident in trying something new, perhaps with their art. So if I was to summarise what I've just been talking to you through here, just putting this into a short sentence really, is that being trauma informed to me is essentially about helping someone to feel safe, to feel seen, and to feel they've got space to express themselves. And this is different for everybody, and a lot of this involves me checking in with them and not making assumptions. And it's so easy to assume that as a therapist that have been doing this for a long time, that I've got that nailed. However, I am constantly reviewing where I'm at. I have art therapy supervision as well. I'm do my own therapy and things like that. Lots and lots of self-care practice, so that I am checking in on my sort of blind spots, so I can see things in a fresh way, rather than feeling that taking on this angle of being the expert, and just because I've been an art therapist for 10 years doesn't mean that I'm an expert in you as a person. But what it does mean is that I've built up those skills and some understanding to really look within when I'm working with somebody, as well as connect with you. So hello. So it's really nice to see you if you've joined today. It feels really good to be able to talk about this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about trauma and talk about being trauma informed is that being online as a therapist has brought up a whole bunch of things for me, and marketing myself as a therapist has brought up a whole bunch of things for me. And I suppose the way describing the processes, the art therapy processes, describing my process and how I'm leaning in and out of different things, different practices, different therapeutic models and coaching models, it makes me I'm needing to step out of my comfort zone to share this, because these are the sorts of things that could be challenging for people to hear. It can be challenging for a client to hear a therapist talk in a very factual way, or talk in a way that places them in a position of authority, because to me the power dynamics of therapy are really important to acknowledge. It would be impossible to have any kind of dynamic to comment on. So it's really important that I sort of acknowledge that. So it's what I'm hoping to do, what I'm intending to do, is to share more of these behind the scenes reflective videos as to what certain things mean to me, and help you to reflect on what that means to you as well, rather than me come online and share factual stuff, things that you can Google, things that you can read up about, things that you can sort of find out about sort of from a theoretical point of view. I'd rather come on and reflect and share my perspective and share some examples with you about this. So if this has been of any value to you today, if you're watching on the replay, if you've come and joined live, if this has been any value to you, please like and comment and share if it feels right. If you got somebody that feels that they would find this useful to watch, maybe they're a coach as well, coach or therapist as well, or maybe they're curious about art therapy or curious about this, how people work like this. Give that a share and let me know if you've got any questions. See you later. Bye bye.